lecture, what we saw mainly was about restriction enzyme, right? So what we saw in restriction enzyme, that it was subclassified into many categories. These restriction enzyme, what I'm talking here is about type 2 restriction enzyme, which are further classified into several subtypes, and the four principal ones are type 2P, that is for palindromic, type 2S shifted, type 2C, which is for combined restriction and modification enzyme together in a complex. Then we have type 2T, where you have two different catalytic sites. So what we'll see today in today's lecture, will mainly focus about type 2S, which is called shifted cleavage, or with two cleavage two different domains, right? So our focus will be this type 2S enzyme. So in this regard, we will first discuss our very first paper, which is which was published by Suji Saki and Kanazawa in year 1981, and the article name was Gene here. And this group coming from Japan, they published a very novel kind of enzyme named as new restriction endonucleases from Flavobacterium ocanocoides and Micrococcus luteus, that is FOK1 and MLU1. So we will only discuss in today's class about Flavobacterium ocanocoides, that is FOK1 enzyme. Okay. So in early 1980s, so in last lecture we talked about 1970s, how the field developed with the help of restriction enzyme, and those were the times where people were looking for restriction enzymes and novel cleavage sites. So this is the time where we are talking about 1980s, where type 2 restriction enzymes were isolated from a variety of microorganisms, and in search of new enzymes, Sujisaki and Kanazawa actually cultivated their bacterial strain, namely Flavobacterium ocanocoides, and they numbered it 1, 2, 5, 3, 6, depending on their culture. And they started with initially just 1 liter culture. So this 1 liter culture gave them 4 gram of wet weight. And then they expanded this culture in 20 grams of frozen cells. So what they did next is they took this 20 grams of frozen cells, they resuspended it into some kind of buffer, and they disrupted these cells using sonication, and at the end they centrifuged it at the really high speed around 30,000 rpm. With that help, they are able to get this clear supernatant. After centrifugation, they got this clear supernatant. So basically, they are trying for protein purification. If you can see the first step, they cultured, they expanded, and then they are looking for some kind of proteins which they can get from this natural source, which is called Flavobacterium. So now the supernatant was applied directly onto a phosphocellulose column. Now this phosphocellulose column is a cation exchanger. That means it has the ability to attract positively charged particles, and meaning the resins are negatively charged, and the proteins will bind if the pH is less than its isocentric point, right? So this is what they did initially. So based on this phosphocellulose, which also actually acts many times as a pseudo affinity medium, many different enzymes were already purified by then. For example, EcoR1 that binds to nucleic acid, several endonucleases like Hindi3, Hindi2. Other kinases were also involved in purification. Some kind of ligases, for example, here T4, DNA ligase, and many more like polymerases, right? So these were in these kind of purification, they used P11 column, and that was the reason they also started with P11 column. So this column was washed, then the eluted protein or the absorbed proteins were eluted with linear gradient of salt concentration. From each fraction, small amount were collected and tested for this nuclease activity. I will come to this figure again and again. So at the end, I will explain this figure, what this means. Okay. So after carrying out the endonuclease activity, the analysis was done based on gel electrophoresis method. So all the fractions that cleaved DNA, as you can see here, they used one substrate. I will also come to the substrate where what they used for cleaving. So this DNA gave discrete bands. All these proteins which were giving some kind of endonuclease activity, they were collected, and the bands were, these all proteins were combined and dialyzed against a particular buffer. So based on this, they actually try to concentrate the protein. Now the fractions from the dialyzed fractions, these fractions were directly charged onto DEAE column, which was a positively charged resin, and it is used mainly in ion exchange chromatography. Now this DEAE column is synthesized by alkali catalyzed reaction. For example, one cellulose or the cellulose material is together with 2-chloro triethylamine. When they combine together in the alkaline mixture, they give rise to your DEAE cellulose column. And this has positively charged because of the presence of this protonated amine group here. Again, this column was washed and the proteins were eluted in fractions, and mainly all those fractions that cleaved DNA. I should mention here in this stage, you have a net charge of the molecules is negative and the column itself, the resin itself is positively charged. So basically, again, all the fractions which were eluted from this column and which also gave the endonuclease activity, they were taken and these fractions were kept in -80. That means all the fractions which gives the activity results, they were combined together, they were dialyzed again at the end, and they were concentrated for the further use. So what they did after that, they purified their protein, and based on the purification, they report here how much salt concentration they used for purification from each column. For example, in P11, this is the concentration of KCl they used, and these are the concentration for DEA column. So in the end, they were able to get around 200 unit per gram of cells. So this is a very good amount to carry out any further enzymatic activity or any purification step further if needed. But whatever purification they were able to carry out, those purification were able to give them the analytical power. That means they could have run those in the gel, and the fragments which were they were taking from the DNA substrate, they were able to analyze it. Now what you see here, so they did next the endonuclease activity. So what they did, the purified proteins, they took and mixed in the buffer together with one substrate. So here they took one substrate from PBr322 as well as one another substrate, namely plasmid AO2. So these two substrate they used, and after having substrate, if they mix their purified protein, they saw the DNA was cleaved. And what you see here in number of bands, these proteins, what they purified, were able to cut a particular substrate, plasmid AO, in different fragments, starting from 1, 2, 3, 4. So that means they were able to show that this has the nuclease activity, and also they were able to define the unit That means how much protein is sufficient to actually cut 1 microgram of plasmid BR322 DNA. So till here they were fine. Next they wanted to see what is the specific characterization of this cut band. So what exactly these bands mean for them. So what you see here is a physical map of two different substrate. One is plasmid AO2 and another is a derivative of plasmid AO2 containing a transposable elements here. I are repeated, inverted repeated elements here in 1 and 2. So what they did, the purified protein FOC1 was able to cleave this fragment into 3 sites. Wherever this protein was able to cleave its derivative into 7 different sites. And these sites are namely F1, fragment 1, fragment 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on until 7. So now, how these physical maps are created. This is not just what I got these bands and I can prepare a physical map. So they, for the preparation of physical map, they initially results, they took their initial result. They also used several enzymes, for example, other restriction enzymes, and initial result gave them each fragments, and these fragments were allocated a definite space in the physical map of plasmid AO2 or plasmid AO3. So this was the preliminary result. But what was unique about this result was there was no unique sequence present at the 5' termini of the fragment. What that means is basically if you talk about restriction enzyme which has more or less palindromic sequences. For example, if a restriction enzyme cut like this from 5' to 3' side, and this is the from 5' to 3' side. And basically if you see these are the sequences, for example you consider these are the sequences and it is cutting in this region like this. So what you see usually in 5' usually in the digestion with any kind of enzyme, so you have very unique 5' site. For example, as soon as you cut this thing, so you have one fragment like this and another fragment like this. So basically, if you do the sequencing or even in gel analysis, you will see a very unique pattern around at this position. So for example, GATC or anything which is very much similar, and this will correspond exactly from 5' side to 3' side here. So these sequences was very unique to other restriction enzyme which they were discovering. But in this case, for example, for FOC1 enzyme, they had no unique sequence present at the 5' termini of the fragment. That means they could not find anything here. Now, therefore, they wanted to actually further investigate the details of precise alignment of this fragment on the physical map. And for that, they performed 5' terminal sequencing. So what is 5' terminal sequencing? I will come to it. So basically what they did, they took all 6 fragments from here. Actually, there are 7 fragments you cannot see here, but they took all prominent 6 fragments of digested fragments from the plasmid PaO3 and they labeled it with P32. For labeling it with P32, what you have to do, you have to first remove the 5' site with the help of alkaline phosphatase. Then you add this gamma ATP in the presence of polynucleotide kinase. And this will phosphorylate your 5' site with P32. So they did this P32 labeling of all 6 fragments And after labeling all these 6 fragments, these fragments were further digested by other enzymes, as you can see here, for example, here. Now, why they did so? For example, you have fragment 1, which is very big, and then you have fragment 3, which is again big. So what they did, this fragment 1 and this fragment 4, they digested the into sub fragments with the help of HAP2 enzyme. And what it will give further subfragment. For example, this region will again give 8 to 9 smaller fragments, and fragment 4 will lead into smaller fragments of 4 to 5, 4 exactly subfragments. Similarly, they digested fragment 2 and fragment 3 with your enzyme HINF1, and fragment 6 and 5 with EVA2 enzyme. So basically they are subdividing the fragments, because in terminal sequencing you have to have very small fragments. Basically up to 50 to 100 base pair sequencing can be done when you have a terminal, you want to do a terminal sequencing. So basically they are cutting the broader fragments into subfragments. So next, what you have right now is P32 labeled fragments, which are further digested into subfragments with the help of restriction enzyme. And now this smaller fragments are then led into sequencing. So this sequencing is known as maximum Gilbert sequencing, and on this substrate. So we will see in further video. I have to play one video which shows exactly technique that how this terminal sequencing is done.
This technique permits the sequencing of at least 100 base pairs from the point of labeling. It consists of 4 main steps. The first step is the end labeling of the single-stranded DNA and PCR amplification. The second step involves the chemical treatment of the amplified DNA in 4 different reaction tubes. The third step is wherein you run an agarose gel electrophoresis of the 4 reaction tubes and you do autoradiography. In the fourth step, from the autoradiograph, you analyze the banding pattern and you find out the sequence of the DNA. The first step in Maxim Gilbert sequencing is end labeling, for which a double-stranded DNA is first denatured by heat or helicases to give single-stranded DNA fragments. The DNA strands, as we know, are complementary to each other. Thus, knowing the sequence of any one of the two strands is enough. Therefore, only one of the single strand need to be sequenced. The single-stranded DNA are thus subjected to agarose gel electrophoresis. The strand which contains more number of purines, that is adenine and guanine, is heavier in nature as compared to its complementary strand. On agarose gel electrophoresis, the heavy strand moves slowly as compared to the light strand, giving rise to 2 DNA bands, each containing a single-stranded DNA. Any one of these 2 bands can be cut out, eluted to obtain the single-stranded DNA. We need to label either of the end, that is either the 5' end or the 3' end. Here we will see 5' end labeling. To add a label, we first need to get rid of the 5' phosphate group. Thus, we use the enzyme alkaline phosphatase, which cleaves the 5' phosphate group, thus creating a free 5' OH site where new labeled phosphate can be attached. We label all the single-stranded DNA with 32 phosphate radio label. Thus, all the single-stranded DNA will have radioactive isotope 32 phosphate on them at the 5' end. For this, we will take a phosphate group from an ATP molecule. As we know, ATP molecules has 3 phosphate, alpha, beta and gamma. For our conversion, we use the enzyme polynucleotide kinase, which will remove the gamma phosphate and transfer it to the 5' OH site. End labeling can be done to a double-stranded DNA followed by denaturation and separation of the single-stranded DNA instead of first doing the single-stranded separation. So any of the method can be followed. You can either label your double-stranded DNA and then you can separate it into single strand, or you can separate your DNA and then add the end labeling. The radio-labeled single-stranded DNA are then subjected to chemical treatment. They are divided into 4 reaction tubes and are given 4 different chemical treatment which generates break at either 1 or 2 nucleotide bases. Treatment with dimethyl sulfate and high temperature at NOH will generate breaks at adenine and guanine. Thus, wherever in the single-stranded DNA, adenine and guanine are present, this particular chemical treatment will create a breaks at those positions. Similarly, a chemical treatment with dimethyl sulfate and dilute HCl will create breaks at the positions of guanine. So wherever on the single-stranded DNA guanine is present, in this chemical treatment, breaks will happen at that position. Chemical treatment with hydrazine and piprimidine will result in breaking at cytosine and thymine positions. And if you treat the single-stranded DNA with hydrazine, piprimidine and NaCl, breaks will be created at cytosine positions. Wherever cytosine is present, at that position the breaks will happen. A 6% polyacrylamide gel is used for sequencing purpose so that we can get a difference of one base pair in the subsequent bands. The sequence analysis is very simple. You can first number the bands from the bottom to the top. Since DNA synthesis takes place from the 5' end to the 3' end, the smaller fragments will be towards the 5' end. And as we know, on agarose gel electrophoresis, the smaller fragments are small, so they move faster as compared to the larger fragments. The lanes with guanine and cytosine treatment will directly show you the position for guanine and cytosine. In this example, we are only considering 7 nucleotide bases. So right now I know that at the 5th position I have guanine, at the 4th position I have cytosine, and at the 1st position also I have cytosine. The A plus G lane shows the position for adenine as well as guanine. We already know that at the 5th position we have guanine. Thus, at the 7th position, we will have adenine. And also at the 3rd position, we will have adenine. Similarly, for the cytosine and thymine lane, we know here breaks are created at both cytosine and thymine. But we already know that at the 4th position and at the 1st position, cytosine is present. So these two are cytosine bands. So the remaining 2 bands will be for thymine. Now, if you just write this in an order, you will get your proper DNA sequence. This is for a short sequence, for example, but normally this is the way it is done. You will always get your 5' to 3' position from the bottom to the top of the gel. Now, the banding pattern that we analyzed was not from the gel, but from the autoradiograph. Here, as we know, electrophoresis is followed by autoradiography. But why are we going for autoradiography to look for the bands and not observing the bands directly after electrophoresis? For example, let us consider the reaction tube where we treat DNA with DMS and dilute HCl, and cuts are made at the sites where adenine is present. Remember, we have many single-stranded DNA copies in the mixture, and these cuts are being made randomly. On this particular single-stranded DNA, Randomly, any adenine can be cut, and this will lead to the generation of many possible fragments of DNA. If we run these fragments directly on an agarose gel, we will end up getting a smear and we cannot conclude anything. As you can see, from one single stranded DNA, when cut is being made randomly on the adenines, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different fragments. Now, there are many different copies of these single stranded DNA in the mixture. On these also randomly cuts will be made, and thus you can imagine you will get a large number of fragments and they will appear like a smear. The only thing that differentiates these 5 fragments is the presence of the end label. On normal electrophoresis, you will see all of these 5 fragments, whereas in autoradiography, you will only see the first fragment. As I said, there are many single-stranded DNA copies in the reaction mixture. So there is a possibility that some adenine may not get cleaved, leading to the generation of different sized label fragments which can be visualized. All of these single-stranded DNA are of different sizes. This is because the cut is being made randomly. So it is not necessary that the adenine at this position will get cut on this single. This is why we get the different sized fragments.
So basically, they performed sequencing assays as explained here. So with the help of sequencing assays, they were able to deduce what is the 5 prime site which is used, or what is the sequence of the 5 prime end of the subfragments that they had used. So now, following the sequencing, the fragments were then analyzed on electrophoresis agarose gel, and for this, the terminal regions of the 6 fragments, for example, fragment 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, what they had used, were aligned as shown here. So what you see here after alignment, they clearly found a one unique sequence. For example, these sequences are already boxed here. So this sequencing technique, they immediately gave them the recognition site, so to say, or proper site, which was present in all different fragments. And they also were able to deduce what is the cleavage end. For example, every time it cleaves 9 to 13 base pair away from the site. I will come to this later. So this was the analysis from their side, from their immediately giving some sequencing results or analysis results. So what are the analysis they are getting, or the summary of the results after sequencing? Let's see here. So FOC1 introduces, first of all, they were able to say that this enzyme cleaves double-stranded DNA. And when they cleaves double-stranded DNA, as you can see here, one cleavage on this side and one cleavage on another side. After cleaving the double-stranded DNA, they the cleavage produces 5 prime ends of 4 nucleotides, as you can see in this case in marked in 1, 2, 3, 4. So they always produce 4 base base pair overhang, 4 base overhang. Now the interesting thing here, so this 4 bases, there is no similarity in the sequence at the cleavage site, meaning the cutting site can be composed of any sequences. For example, here if you see in first strand it is cutting after T, but in here the second strand it is cutting after A. So even if you go back, so this is cutting after A or after T here in this section, and in this section it is a cutting after C. So there is no unique pattern that it cuts only after certain unique base. So here that means it can cut to any base pair, whether it is GC or, but there might be some sequences preferences that we can see in further lectures. But at this moment, they were able to see that there is no similarity in the sequences at the cut site. Now, next observation, they saw that this pentanucleotide sequence, which is GGATG, is always present in all the fragments. For example, here all the fragments, whatever they deduce, they all had this unique site GGATG, GGATG, GGATG. So that means they are recognizing this palindromic sequences, and this contains GG80. Sorry, it is not palindromic, and this has unique site. For example, GGATG, and after this site, they always found that after 9 base pair, there is one cut on the top strand, and there after 13 nucleotide, there is cut at the bottom strand. So the another unique thing they found is about the cleavage. So this is always after 9 and 13 base pair, as said here. So most probably they found the recognition site containing GGATG, and this they also confirmed with the help of another substrate from coming from plasmid BR322. So here all the studies were conducted with the help of plasmid AO3, and here this was conducted with BR322. So the mode of FOC1 cleavage was formulated like this as shown here. So there is one recognition site, and as soon as you find the recognition site, you have to see further downstream 9 base pair. This will have one cleavage here, and then further cleavage will happen at the 13 base pair site. So this was their whole study that they reported in 1981, that the FOC1 enzyme is able to cut double-stranded DNA, although the mode of action, like what is the mode, how it is cutting, all those was not published at that time, but they reported that this enzyme they found was different from other restriction enzymes which always recognizes the palindromic sequences, but this FOC1 recognizes one particular sequence of pentanucleotide non-palindromic sequences. And again, the cleavage thing is very different from another enzyme. That means it is not cutting within the recognition site, but it is cutting in shifted way. That means the cleavage site is shifted further downstream of the downstream in the DNA sequence. So with this, the conclusion, we saw type 2S restriction enzyme in today's lecture. We saw they purified this enzyme over different types of columns, starting from phosphocellulose and ion exchange chromatography. Then they worked on the terminal sequencing, which is very important, which was very important at that time. Now we have sequencer and many high-tech next generation sequencing. So we use that. And then they were able to say that recognition sequence of FOC1 enzyme was GGATG. So with this, I'm at the end of my lecture. If you have doubts, you can ask, or anything we can discuss. So regarding last two lectures, what I'm planning, I will record it again with a good voice, and I will upload on the class material side. So all these lectures I will be recording and I will be uploading on the Teams on the class material. Okay, thank you. Any doubts? Anything you want to discuss?
Ma'am,
Aviral. Yes, Aviral.
Yes, ma'am, Miss Avril. Ma'am, for using those fragments, how did we know that these enzymes are the ones which we have to use for cutting those
No,
fragments? Like,
no, it was not by knowing. So basically, they used a phage DNA, and they used plasmid DNA PBR322, and these two were well characterized at that time. So they knew exactly what are the sequences, what are the enzyme they were cutting. So basically they were using this as a substrate already, and they knew that physical maps were already created at that time. So already some previous knowledge was there. So here I have not explained, but some previous knowledge was there, and so they were able to create this smaller fragments with the help of this enzymes.
Oh, okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah,
Shahanti.
Chitin. Yes, please. So the strategy for my, yes, go ahead. Somebody is talking. So what I am thinking, like every lecture, I will prepare only 15 to 20 minutes this kind of lecture where I'm only discussing about one paper and one at a time. So the idea is I will go slowly about first FOC enzyme, then we will discuss about zinc finger proteins, and slowly there also we will take very critical papers for the for main thing, that how the field started, who was the first person who actually found these enzymes, and what are the things he reported, by which method. For example, we can see that he reported the recognition sequence of FOC1 enzyme, and he purified it. So the purification basically was done with the help of phosphocellulose column. And when he recognizes the site, the method what he used was maximum Gilbert method sequencing. So these things are important. So as we progress further, we will also take next paper, and we'll see what experiments they did and what are the results they are getting. So, and from that results, what are they concluding? Yes, Prabhabir Kumar Das.
Yeah, ma'am, I'm asking, ma'am, what is the significance of this particular subtype of restriction? I mean, why we are studying this particular subtype?
Why you are studying particular subtype? You were present in yesterday's lecture?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, and you were also present in introduction session,
No, no, no,
introductory.
no, ma'am, no, ma'am.
Okay, so there I have explained that what would be the flow of my lecture. Okay, you can mute your mic. So basically, the idea here is in genomes editing, when you see the thing which we have to know, that how a gene can be edited, right? And for editing, lot of people use different kind of techniques. For example, lot of hype is given, or even it because it is very easier to use. We all know about CRISPR. Probably everybody in this group knows CRISPR value, that, and in fact, all the labs are using this technology, where it is so easy to mutate one of the enzyme or one of the important function. So here we are studying FOC1 enzyme basically for many reasons. First, this is the one enzyme which was used in all the system, starting from zinc finger to talons and to CRISPR also. So this is one enzyme whose catalytic domain was used in all this recombinant DNA. That is one thing. And second thing, that is actually the main thing why we are studying FOC1, how it cuts, where it cuts. So that is mainly because this FOC1 was the main enzyme which is used in all these techniques, starting from zinc finger, talons and CRISPR, to hybrid another DNA binding domains. I will slowly come to that point, but the idea of studying this FOC1 is to say that how the field started, the genome editing field started only by purifying this FOC1 enzyme. So if we do not know any cutting site, maybe some other shifted enzyme we can use. So there are other known shifted enzyme that can also be known, but we want to know what are the mechanism, how it cuts a double stranded DNA. Only after knowing the mechanism, that where it cuts, what are the ways, what are the amino acids of that proteins are involved in cutting, then only we can use this FOC1 enzyme in engineering with another protein. For example, we want to mix this protein of C-terminal domain of FOC1 together with another binding domain so that it can be, used in proper way. For example, I want to mutate a sequence giving AATTT and this sequence I know exactly. So most of the genes what we study now, the sequencing is already known, right? And we also know in some kind of diseases, some of these sequences probably they have SNPs, for example, single nucleotide polymorphism, and because of just one single nucleotide polymorphism, they associate with the diseases. So if you want to correct that one nucleotide, you can very well use CRISPR technology these days, or earlier people used to use just zinc finger nucleases and talents and other base tools. So we want to use this as a tool to create hybrid enzyme. And as I said in my introductory lecture, that this field, what we are studying here is genome editing and engineering is divided into two parts. One is the basic study where we are studying the genes, we are studying the enzymes, and how it is applied will be taken by Dr. Raj in his application part. For example, he can very well teach you that how FOC1 enzyme was used in so different types of diseases and how zinc finger was used in different types of diseases. So my portion will deal basically how this field came into the existence, like how FOC1 was discovered, then how FOC1 recognition enzyme recognition site was known, then what are the proteins which are involved in the uh, exact recognition, then how it can be used further in creating hybrid enzymes. So those part I will be dealing it. Okay. So that is why we are studying FOC1 enzyme. Yes, Arendu Mandal.
So, ma'am, yesterday you talked about the type 2 P type. Now you are talking about type 2 S type. So, I am just curious why this ASP naming is there. Why not ABCD and like that?
Why it is, what is your question? Why it is named as PS and things like that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this is basically something has to do with the discovery and the way they classified. So technically, I don't know much, but P is for palindromic. So all type 2 P enzyme, which we studied yesterday, that is the most of the type 2 enzyme what we use in molecular cloning experiments, right? And when you see those details, they always use this palindromic sequences that has the mirror phase that yahan se bhi this also side they will read the similar and here also they will read the same. That means they have the palindrome and that's why they were categorized as a P enzyme. And this is categorized as a S. And basically the reason you should see here that they recognize at one position, for example here, but they have cleavage at the shifted place. They are not cleaving within the recognition site, right? So that is the reason why they have been named as a shifted one. And similarly, other C and T was named.
Thank you, ma'am.
Uh, Priya Raj, yes, please.
Ma'am, my query is when we cut a DNA sequence by using this type 2S enzyme, then
Yes.
we get same results, like same results can be reproduced for the same DNA sequence, or each time we will get different 5' overhangs
No, for the same DNA, for
for same
example,
DNA sequence. Yes.
for the same DNA sequence, you will always get the same overhang. Okay. But
Okay.
if you are using different substrate, then you will get a different overhang. That is a very good question. Thank you. So basically, if you see here, you have a recognition site, and this recognition site can occur anywhere in the DNA sequences. For example, if you are taking PBR322 as a substrate, then this sequence will occur but the cleavage site will be entirely different than other substrate site. So these are the different substrate, or maybe they have more than one recognition site, and entirely every time they have different cleavage site. But for the same substrate, for the same DNA, they will always have the same site, same overhang, because
Thank
the
you, ma'am.
position of cleavage is entirely same. So 9 and 13 is very well conserved. So they will always cut at the ninth position here, and they will cut at the bottom strand, they will cut at the 13th position. And we'll see in future lectures that how this was discovered and what are the ways we can always see further. Regarding yesterday's question about type 1 and type 3 enzymes, right? A few, I think I forgot the name, but questions were there. And later I checked into the PubMed. Actually, there are a lot of studies going on now with the help of next generation sequencing. And there are few details. If you are interested, then I can download that and I can actually share it with you in class material. But those are really vast details and very much pro for people who are working exactly in restriction modification systems only. For example, everyone has different field of research, right? So if somebody is into microorganisms or directly into restriction enzymes and selection pressures, so I would recommend those students to actually read those details about type 1, type 2, and type 3, because those are really interesting details, and a lot of crystal structures are available. So you can get that how things are working there. Yes, Manish.
Uh, Ma'am, my question was, since this is type 2S has shifted cleavage site, so uh, in type 1 and type 3, the protein itself moves along the DNA to cleavage. So if we use it similar to this, does it just randomly cut on the same DNA fragment, or will there also the cleavage site will be similar?
Okay, this is very good thinking and question also. So, but I will not answer this right now, because slowly we will move further and will progress further in FOC1 enzymes. I will basically actually take at least 4 to 5 lectures on FOC1 itself. Okay, until we see its structure completely. So then when we study about one after another next publication on FOC1, it will be becoming clearer that how exactly it is cleaving the at 9 and 13 base pair. Is that fine?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yes, Trithankar Sen, yes.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, clearly.
Yeah. So in one slide, you mentioned that they use PBR 322 to essentially quantify the activity of the isolated enzyme, which this enzyme basically, right?
Yes, yes.
So at that time, was using PBR 322 a standard practice, or can I say that they were just lucky that they had the active site in PBR 322? If they used something else, they would have never known this activity. So is this the right
Exactly.
way of thinking?
Yes, exactly. So basically, you are right. So they were knowing somehow that they used both the plasmid together, and when they published see you will come to know slowly when you do research that parallelly you actually work, if you are working on one enzyme which is having endonuclease activity, you will not be using only one substrate. So you must have been using 5 6 different substrate, right? So basically you will be lucky to get 7 different bands if your particular site is there. So they must have reported from there. But PBR, they have not detailed the study, or maybe they might have published at some other thing. I have not entirely researched the whole area. So basically, when I was preparing this lectures, and since I'm taking this for the first time, So I was only concentrated like how this whole area or whole field developed, what are the main studies and how we can link this together with the hybrid enzyme. So that was my way of thinking into the lecture. But certainly there might be other publication that I should not comment on, or maybe I can check and then only I can comment. But that I know that when you work on these kind of enzymes, for example, endonuclease enzymes, so the substrate you take not only one substrate, at least 4-5 substrate you must be working on, right? So and they reported on PaO3, and they also confirmed it with the PBr322.
Okay. So they went as wide as they possibly could and hoped to get a positive result.
Yes, yes. That is what we actually start from. And then we report what is the best result we have that we try to, publish and try to show.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. And please upload those papers regarding the RM systems. I asked the question yesterday.
Yes, yes, yes. I could recognize your voice and the name as well. So I will upload. So you are working on the enzymes, or what are your
I am just
what
a
is your
MTech student, ma'am.
okay, what is the okay, fine. But I will upload it. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Welcome. Any other question? So basically, I will upload this video. I will upload the other material. For example, the original paper of Sajisaki Kanazawa paper, from which I have mentioned this slides from. So this is basically in that paper there are two enzymes. One about MLU, and MLU is basically another enzyme which was very easy for them to sequence and get published. But for our own purpose, we are only interested. We were only interested in FOC1. So I took from that paper only the FOC1 part and presented it here, right? So that is how you should also study from their paper. So basically what is important for your examination purpose or from quiz purpose will be the slides, basically what we have seen in the class, and also materials and methods of the paper, because that is the main thing one should know from one research article paper. So how they went about the purifying the enzyme, what are the difficulty and other things. So I've seen out of 62 today, 61 now. So I have downloaded your attendance already. So, okay. Any other questions? Because now we are about to end. Okay. So if there are no further questions, I thank you all, and see you tomorrow then. Okay. Same time. Thank you.
ma'am.
Thank you.